Greetings and salutations, travelers, and welcome back to the Inn of Planar Crossroads. And, as always, welcome back to our Around the Hearth discussions. I am Adam L. Spain, your host at the Inn of Planar Crossroads. Come in, sit down, warm your feet by the fire, drink your preferred beverage of choice, and this time we're discussing alignments. And specifically, we're continuing the segment on alignments, and we're going to go through each alignment in its own little section. So that's going to be Lawful Good this time, as the title that you guys are looking at would suggest. Before we get into that, announcements, always less than 5 minutes. You can time me. Here we go. So as far as announcements for the Inn of Planar Crossroads, you guys are going to be seeing this in the new year. So, because we're recording this before I make those end of year videos, but you guys will see this, you viewers, at the start of the new year. So you'll see one of the many, hopefully, updated graphical flourishes that we're going to be putting in the videos. So hopefully that'll be fun for y'all. We're going to continue doing those different things, as well as things that were in the announcement / end of year video and beginning of next year, beginning of 2022 video that we did. I'm not sure about any of the other things that we've got on that announcement video coming to fruition just yet, so I'm going to hold off on those and let that video have spoken for itself. Past tense. So that is
a content creator.
Right. So that is that is my announcement section for this time. Dan and Kristen from Avenue Studios are with us this time. So, do y'all have any announcements from the Avenue Studio side?
Yeah, absolutely, always. Well, we're of course on Patreon and Locals, and you can find us on YouTube, Rumble, and anywhere podcasts are found. And I think the big things that is coming out in January are 2 last episodes in our Cogent one-shot, holiday one-shot will have just come out. So check those out. It goes from super funny to super serious, and it's amazing. The players did a great job, so I highly recommend checking that out and checking out Cogent, the system, Shadowversity, and Jasmine. And then I think hopefully soon we're doing the work on live streaming now and getting that set up, so we'll hopefully have our Patreon games being live streamed and other games coming forward. So start to look for us on Twitch soon enough.
Okie dokie. Sounds good. We've kind of held off on Twitch stuff here because my internet's not good enough for Twitch streaming, so that's the thing.
Twitch isn't good enough for your internet, that's what it is.
No. I mean, I believe you, except I've tested the internet speed here and it's not what we're paying for, so I don't know.
Frustrating.
Anyway, that's a side point. We're talking about Lawful Good this time. We're going to try and keep these around 30-ish minutes for each. It shouldn't be too hard considering how much stuff there is to cover in Lawful Good, Lawful Neutral, which we're recording next, and, so on and so forth. But let's get into it. So do you guys want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
Yeah, go ahead. Lead us off.
Okay. So I'll start Lawful Good, then you guys can start Lawful Neutral. How about that?
Sounds good.
All right. So some notes on Lawful Neutral that I've got. When you're talking about Lawful Good, there's those characteristic ones like Superman. We talk about Superman being Lawful Good, and he very much is in most of his iterations. He is that Ubermensch type of characterization and modern myth for that. So we've got Superman, and I think that he's a good one to look for if you're looking for things that fall into that Paladin style of Lawful Good. Especially when you look at things that have gone on in some of the iterations of Superman that pushed him and pushed him to break that, like the Justice League, because I'll be referencing this time too. The Justice League and Justice League Unlimited cartoons that tied to Batman the Animated Series and Superman the Animated Series from, I guess those ran in the 90s and early 2000s. So that's about when those were from. Those had great representations of multiple types of what we would term in this discussion as alignments, working together and doing things, and some working with the Justice League but not refusing to be part of the Justice League, because we see that at one point. I'm not going to say spoilers for like that old of a cartoon, but Batman does not stay with the Justice League forever. He works with the Justice League, but he considers himself more of a consultant than like a member of the Justice League in some of the, especially some other iterations of that. And we see that to be a strong indicator of how these different, especially representations of lawful good, can be put together. In some iterations, Wonder Woman would be a lawful good character, and in some iterations she would be more of a neutral good, or perhaps chaotic good, depending on her writers. But for
all the writers,
yeah, all the writers.
Just talking about that.
So, depending on the writers. So, as far as Superman goes, that is very classic lawful good. But I propose that the Batman from Batman the Animated Series, and by extension, Batman the Batman in the Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, falls under lawful good as well. Now, this is not true for all Batmen, because they are not all created equal. There's like a Thomas Wayne Batman that is very much not lawful good, and that's from an alternate universe, and that's actually Batman's alternate universe if Bruce died in that alley and his parents had to deal with the grief type thing. So we see that as a good example, that particular type of Batman writing, as a good example of lawful good being characterized, but as something you wouldn't necessarily expect, because most people would tend to characterize Batman either as neutral good or chaotic good, depending on how hardcore he was. But the Batman we're talking about there, he was definitely lawful good, but he wasn't a nice guy. He was fair, but he was not necessarily the funnest guy to be around either. Very stoic. Very stoic.
Yeah, good word.
So, those two characters are a good representation of the way that lawful good can be both very, what most people will call goody two-shoes with Superman, but also very stoic and very strong, and very much closer to what you might see in having chaos mixed in with that lawfulness, even though they're still serving the same purpose. And if you want to discuss that in the comment section below, you can. It's good for the YouTube algorithm. I don't mind. But be civil. So before I go on to other examples that I've pulled from Lawful Good to talk about, is there any that y'all want to bring up?
Well, one thing unless you had something.
No, you go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, because I was wanting to bounce off of Batman a little bit. Because I'm excited about this too. My very first character was a lawful good paladin in Pathfinder First Edition, so that was very stressful. Until Zach, shout out to Zach, helped me think through it too. I think the most important thing that I think of with the lawful is that the code that they follow, because it's very important, of course, that they follow a code, but that it's the code is given from some external force, so they can. And I think this goes to your argument that Batman is lawful good. They can break laws in other places if those laws do not adhere to the strict code from whatever external source it is. So I'm not as familiar with that Batman, but so correct me if I'm wrong or what you're thinking of that too. And that discussion might bring out some stuff for people to think about. Is Batman following a code that's outside of him? Because I tend to think when you get to neutral good, that's when it's more of an internal code that they've come to themselves that allows them to kind of flex.
Well, I think that a way to better divide that might not necessarily be something outside. Well, it is with the gods, like with the god stuff. But when, like, Batman doesn't serve a specific god, neither does Superman. So,
Right.
I mean, he knows, he acknowledges their existence, but does not serve any particular one. So, the idea would be more of a, I guess, for a good way to divide it, and this could go towards not just the Batman Superman example, but examples in general, is the law is what we're talking about, lawful good specifically. Yep. And lawful good is about the spirit of the law being fulfilled. And when we get to lawful neutral, so spoilers for that one, it's the letter of the law being fulfilled. And so we see these gradients start to happen in that lawful line, because that's the main distinguisher here. Before we get to neutrals, is that the law is what's defining how that good is expressed. So the relationship of the spirit of the law to the implementation of it. So with it might be a good way to say that within lawful good, there is much room for mercy. And as you go down the gradient of lawful, there's less and less room. There's less room for mercy until you get to like the lawful evil, and then it's self-serving mercy. But whatever, you can get to that when we get there. So that
I think all lawful good think that there is good in everybody, and they want to bring that out of every single person.
I can see that.
I can see that too. Yeah, I read an article when we were preparing about this, and that line that was like, said something to that effect of the world, the good in the world, that's what they're trying to bring out for lawful good, is all the good. And anything that is antithesis to the good is evil. So I think they use the example of a tree. A tree is good because it is part of the world and how it's built. And if you cut it down to use it for something good, for something profitable, and you do it in a wise way, then that's good. But if you're being selfish, Saruman, style, then it's evil because it's destroying the good.
All right. I can see how that would be a way of characterizing that. There's also the idea of a less superhero and more other type of look at it. You have like Aragorn could be considered lawful good, even though he's been out and about and doing a whole bunch of stuff, especially Aragorn of the books.
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
He very much knows he's supposed to be a king. He very much knows he's going to have to be a king. But that doesn't necessarily mean he was going to rush in and take and be the king right then. He kind of spaced that out and tried to time it right and all that type of stuff. So there's that understanding in that way. And you can get a lot of kind of nuance with him, because he didn't make a whole bunch of friends as a ranger, but he ended up, even though he's going to have to be diplomatic when he was king, that doesn't mean he was particularly diplomatic when he was a ranger.
Yeah.
So.
If you can't say something nice, don't say nothing at all. So we just kind of hid in the corner.
Well, I definitely in the books too, he's so like, I won't even enter Gondor until it's the right time. And then there's also afterwards in the book, I think a good example of lawful good and the mercy aspect is, I can't remember the character's name, but it's the guard who guards the place of the dead in Gondor, it's a guard who kills the other guard at the place of the dead of Gondor to rescue Faramir because he's going to be burned alive. So he kills him there, and then later in the aftermath, Aragorn says, "You are banished from Gondor because he broke the law." But then he says, "You will be assigned as basically the Faramir's right-hand man." And this character loved Faramir, and it was So he was still staying to the law, that you broke the law even though you were doing something to save someone. You have to be punished to break the law. But I will do it in a merciful way that blesses you, even though I'm still following the letter of the law.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I definitely, Aragorn was one of the first lawful goods I thought of, from the book especially. They went a little loosey-goosey in the movie. Not that I mind, but...
Yeah.
I feel like Frodo was too, though, in a way, because he was Smeagol or Gollum, he was so kind to him, seeing the good in him, and I don't know about the law, but he knew what he had to do. He was going to do his mission, but
yeah, I think you could argue that he had at a mission level. You could make an argument.
I know he's definitely on the good side,
right?
But he also had his mission, and he was going to fill it out no matter what. So that was like his law that he was going to follow.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be hard to classify Frodo because he, as the ring bearer, bears so much. You see a lot of his conflict through the book, so it's a good way of showing the temptation of a good character towards evil, or if you want to see it that way. Sam could also be considered lawful good.
Yeah, for sure.
He did fulfill his oath. It's tricky for the hobbits because they're very chaotic, I guess, in general. They lean a bit more chaotic, but in the same sense they have a very rural lifestyle that doesn't involve a lot of rigidity in the traditional sense of lawful rigidity, but there is the idea that they like the order of the way that their place is. They like it the way it is. So there is that.
And I think that's why I know it really helped me to think about the law being a specific law outside of itself. For the hobbits, it's their customs, it's their traditions, and they follow those. And that's why going off adventuring is just seen as weird. It's outside the tradition. It's outside the law that the culture has established. So law doesn't have to be a god or deities or anything like that. It could be
your mission.
Something. To me, the important thing about the law is that it, especially for lawful good, I think, is that it's something beyond you that you are willing to sacrifice.
And it kind of goes to like a cop, like the classic cop shows. I guess they're following more strict laws, but
right.
It's kind of like that. They're not following a deity necessarily, but they're following like a strict code.
The good cop.
The good cop. Yes.
Yeah. I think a way of thinking about that is the law represents something that you would consider good and you would do it regardless of whether it was your preference to do so or not. You would do the good. You would do what the law said in service of the good. So there's a lot to be said in that vein of distinguishing lawful good versus the other goods. For those that like to dive into such things, you could probably get a lot of inspiration from the expanded universe, not what Disney did, but the expanded universe of the Star Wars with the Jedi and stuff like that. Because there are games, I think that I know the Star Wars game uses a scale for Force users from Jedi all the way to Sith. So there is that mechanically that we mentioned before that's usable, but also it's useful to understand that if you were going to put it in D&D terms, in the 9 alignment terms, then the Jedi would consider themselves to be on the good side, and they would fall more into the law than they would into the new you could argue neutral good, but like with the council and stuff like that, and the fact that it's a code. They're like space monk wizard things, space sorcerer wizard monk things.
Your meme was so good.
So it's an idea of that law being something outside them that they would that is being, I guess, practiced would be the right word. It's being practiced. All of these Jedi are practicing a good desirable thing from the forces, from what they perceive the forces' point of view to be. And then they are doing that lawfully that way because of the force, because of the motivating teachings they have, those things outside themselves that they themselves would prefer sometimes not to do. You see, like Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi disagree on things in the shows. You see Anakin and Obi-Wan disagree with things on the show and in the movies, and you see that in Yoda and all of them. But they still are all Jedi, at least until Anakin decides to go all weird. But anyway.
Over a girl.
He done gone crazy. Girl crazy.
Girl crazy.
Making a dad makes you go crazy too, I suppose. So.
Fair enough. But that's kind of something to draw on also. So.
Yeah.
And, might be good to talk about character experiences. So you mentioned experiences with your lawful good character. Mm-hmm. So, has Kristen made a lawful good character before, or has she stayed all chaotic and such?
Man.
In that campaign, she was neutral good.
Yeah.
Which made it fun between our two characters.
Yeah.
Totally had a thing.
I was more a druidy kind of archer character.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever done a lawful character.
I don't think so. I'm too crazy.
Oh, well, it's you can still have fun as a lawful good.
Well, you know what? Aurora is lawful good, though. We talked about that.
Yeah.
That's probably her first, yeah.
Yes, that is true. And it's actually, she's become very difficult for me to play in a way, even though I'm like kind of just starting to really feel her out, because she is closer to me and who I act like, and stuff, or who I am. I'm like, so it's difficult because I'm like, you gotta be yourself. It's like a little bit more vulnerable. So I liked playing all these characters that weren't as much like myself. So, because I know personally, I'm definitely more lawful good in general. So
that's what she tells everybody.
Yeah, and then it's got that chaotic side. Yeah, so she's actually been a harder character for me to play because of that, I think.
And when you think about that,
there's a lot more weight on it, I guess.
When you think about it, that means it's very interesting to the way she's been played. She was a lawful good character, by your estimations, using deception. She was pretending to be Ingrid, but she was...
And there are reasons.
Yeah, there are reasons she was pretending to be Ingrid, and she was doing so in service to her deity. And so she has that lawful code that she's following with her deity, that the order must be upheld and those different types of things. And yet there is still that understanding of, yes, you don't want to do that necessarily, but it's for service towards the good, you might say. And it can be a way of differentiating between neutral good and lawful good is the law being used in service of the good rather than just the good for its own sake type thing. There might be a way of looking at it like that.
Yeah, she's kind of more of a cleric of the grave. Is that the...
Yeah, a cleric of the grave.
She's kind of more of a cleric of the grave person, so if you're dead, you're dead. And if they're alive, they're alive. They should never come back. And that's kind of one of her core things. So it kind of sets her in that lawful territory. So like even if a comrade died, she can't bring them back. She will not let them come back because it's just not. It's against her code.
So that's a good way of looking at it for understanding that, like you said, even if someone died Which, that's kind of happened. She's not okay. Now, this would be interesting to see. Is she okay with resurrection magic, but not okay with necromancy resurrection? We see is there a distinction in the mind of her and her deity? And so...
There's definitely an internal battle going on there.
Yeah, I tapped into it a little bit because when Janae played that one character, a shades usually touch death in some way, and Kristen's character had a problem with that.
Yeah, because I was like, is she dead? Is she not dead? Like, I don't trust that. Yeah.
Fair enough. So, we're getting close to the 30-minute mark. Lawful good's a bit easier to talk about, I would guess, because a lot of people have ideas of what lawful good is. And it's been pretty standardized for people. A final thing that I have before we end up closing this particular discussion out. Lawful good does not mean lawful stupid. That came around when GMs and DMs were really, really strict and kind of jerkish about the whole paladins have to be this, and then, I'm going to dump my int so that they can just tell me to look over there, and then I'll go over there and look, and they do the bad stuff while I'm gone, and I don't know. Or dump their wisdom or something. And that's what that kind of ended up coming from. But lawful good does not mean lawful stupid. So, no lawful means lawful stupid, because that's not a good idea. That's not a very nuanced idea. Everybody's so desirous of nuance, and yet they don't practice it in their daily stuff. So, anyway, that's most of the points that I have. Are there any points y'all want to bring up for lawful good before we call this good?
I think the only last thing that helped me when I was playing my lawful character was to remember that just because you're a lawful good character, it doesn't mean you obey all laws out there. You do have the balance of the good. If law is being used for good, like we've been talking about, then you'll abide. You have respect for laws, but Cheliax from Pathfinder being a great example, a lawful good character would be like, I respect that you have laws, but none of these laws are upholding the good by my standards, so I'm not going to abide by those. So you don't have to be trapped. I started to feel a little trapped in certain places, but I'm like, well, I'm lawful good. I should obey the laws of this place, but it's going against my good, the good part of my lawful good. So it has to be a balance of there is law, but it's also law for the good.
Law for the good, yeah. And so, that made me look back at my notes, and I was like, oh yeah, Captain America from the Civil War movies and comic series. Captain America is a very lawful good character. When you go and you look at him and you're like, yeah, he's like the Superman, not fully like Superman, but he's like the Superman of that particular setting. So that character is very much lawful good. That's means that this lawful good character, is he now not lawful good anymore because he won't do what the government was telling him to do to be registered, that all the aren't metahumans, whatever they're called in DC in MCU, have to be registered. You have to, everybody, and they got to be tracked all the time. Well, it's an invasion of privacy and all that type of stuff. So there were those moral problems that he had with that, because he saw it as what it was, like a Nazi-style sanctioning of those people. Right. So. Yeah,
and his law is very based in American-style law, so that goes against his moral code. Yep, that's a good point.
So there you go. Lawful good characters don't always do what the law says. They use the law in service of the good. So that might be the best way to put it. I think I'm done with what we got for this one. We're at 30 minutes.
Very good.
Basically, exactly. So, all right. I appreciate everyone's attention tonight. We're glad that you stopped by, sat by the fire with us, and warmed your toes as we discussed tabletop stuff. We're We're going to be pretty much on it if I include the bloopers. So, 30 minutes for you.
Nailed it.
Yeah. As always, have a great day. God bless and enjoy. Bye.
Bye.
This content was made possible by travelers and viewers like you. Thank you.
Actually, someone had a picture. They had Batman in a place that you wouldn't like, so I might bring that up during the chat.
Oh, okay. That's fine by me, because it's one of those things when we get to Batman, I'll be like, yeah, Batman, it depends a lot on the iteration of Batman you end up talking about. Because
Right, I know.
not all Batmen are created equal.
No. The more writers you get, the more, I don't know. Nothing makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Please continue to drink it with 2 hands. That's adorable.
I have to. It's heavy.
She's like, it comes in pints?
Yeah.
Nailed it. Lawful good. I
For
like
the
playing
win.
it. For the win. I want to go back to a lawful good character.
Oh.
It's fun. It was really for my first time being a Pathfinder first edition. It was rough, learning curve.
I feel we should have mentioned Katie's character. She's a Paladin.
Oh yeah,
So she's a space paladin.
I forgot about that.
No. Fair enough.
Her character, she's having a really hard time with it in Jacob's lab.
Yeah.
Campaign. She's having a hard time with her character keeping to the law. But I should have mentioned.
Well, we could talk about it for hours.
Yeah. I don't know if she would maybe more lawful neutral. I'm probably good.
She's definitely lawful good to start, but the things that are happening in the game
Or changing.
I think it's actually breaking her lawful part. Or what I think is happening is the basis of her law. Her law is the code of the Paladins.
Mm-hmm.
But because of being on this new planet and what's happening to her, she's adopting a new code. So I actually think she's still lawful
She's
good.
still lawful good.
She's just
different
transitioning what code she's following.
So.
Ugh.
And for those who stuck around for the bloopers, the official name is not Paladin. It is, they've got some name for it. So.
It's Paladin.
Oh, no. Okie dokie.
Okay. There's nothing more to say.
No.
Katie and Austin have a proclivity to take 2 words and smash them together and see what happens. They've got 4th kids. It's the thing.